Great. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a lot of new folks on this call today, which is excellent. For those that don't know me, my name is Maytal Kowalski, and I'm the interim chair of JSpaceCanada. At JSpaceCanada, our vision is a future of self-determination and sovereignty for Jews and Palestinians in Israel-Palestine, championed by Canadian Jews. We aim to shift the conversation around Israel-Palestine from our political institutions to our Shabbat tables. We believe the way to do this is exactly what we are doing now, coming together, raising our voices, and finding community. Before we proceed, I would like to acknowledge that this event is taking place on the ancestral homelands of the Indigenous peoples across Canada, caretakers and stewards of this land for time immemorial, each with their own unique traditions, languages, and history. Personally, I'm currently speaking to you today from the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, what is known today more commonly as Vancouver, British Columbia. If you'd like to share the traditional Indigenous territory from where you're joining, you may do so in the chat. And I'm just going to let some more people in here. There we go. And a few housekeeping notes. As you likely noticed, we're recording this session. We do share all of our recordings on our YouTube channel. It does only pick up the speakers and the highlighted individuals, but if you are concerned, you are welcome to turn off your camera for the duration of the recording. And because one of our key pillars at JSpaceCanada is engaging in dialogue, we conduct all of our speaker events as exactly that. So you'll see that we're in a meeting room format today, not a webinar format. And that is because we do want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. I'm going to definitely start off with a few moderated questions, but I highly encourage you to join in when you do have a question. You can do so either in the chat and I will read it out for you, or if you would like to ask questions in your own voice, which we always encourage of either Hamze or Maoz, you are absolutely welcome to use the raise hand function in your reactions bar of your Zoom screen. And this one is the most important. We're a big group today, and we ask that you please be respectful to the speakers and your fellow attendees. We have a zero tolerance policy for racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian language, or any otherwise hateful language. And today I'm so happy, so honored to welcome Maoz Inon and Hamze Awawde. And we are going to be discussing something that is so important, especially in these times, which is how to make hope. So I'm actually going to bring them both into the screen with me. Oh, whoops. Add pin. Remove pin. There we go. There's everybody. Maoz and Hamze, welcome to our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
It's great honor, Maytal, and thanks for making this happen, and to all the amazing audience we have. I see some of my best friends and some that I've never met before, so it's great to be here. Yeah.
Amazing. So really quickly, for folks that don't know these two on the screen, though I hope you do, Maoz Inon is a pioneering social entrepreneur in Israel. After losing his parents in the horrific attacks of October 7th, he has become a leading voice for peace in international media. And Hamze Awawde is a Palestinian peace activist whose family has been heavily impacted by the violent reality of this conflict. He has spent the last 12 years leading programs that bring Jewish Israelis and Palestinians together. So based on kind of jumping off from that, I think actually, a lot of our webinars that we've done, especially in the last little while, have kind of focused on policy and politics and that kind of world. We're really lucky to have you today and have a little bit of a change of pace because so much of your work is led by your own personal stories and connecting on a personal level. So with that, I think that's how I want to start. I'm going to go to Hamze first, if you want to share your story and what brought you to the work, and then we can hear from Maoz.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today and for JSpace for bringing us. I see here many friends. It warms my heart when I see friends over and over. Thank you. So I came to this work I think as a teenager, I was always curious how I can be involved in politics, in fighting the occupation, but how to do it smartly, morally, without being exploited by agenda that doesn't serve me personally or the life I want. I started with the internet. I was reading often Israeli news, left and right, and all type of news, not only politics, trying to, understand what the people behind the wall live and do in their life. My generation, unlike my father generation, did not get to meet Israelis in their personal capacity. We just met Israelis as soldiers and at the checkpoints and coming to our houses. Or we watched the settlers in surrounding our areas. We saw the Israelis in the news, but it's not like a genuine view into the society. I went to the first Israeli-Palestinian meeting. I met Israelis my age, students, mainly from Tel Aviv University. They had their views. It was not like all views that I would like, but some I actually found that I really like their vision and I really share their understanding of the situation. I wanted, I was not naive to think, we can make, end the conflict by ourselves, but at least to live the values we are calling for. So when we meet each other, we meet respectfully without prejudices or stereotypes. We talk like civilians who are, not passive and want to influence what's going on. And we shared our concerns about the future. The conflict is still alive and is there, even though some politicians wanted us to feel and think that now we have a status quo that is permanent and it's working for everyone. We didn't agree because this is not a realistic view of the situation. I got to meet so many Palestinians and so many Israeli Jews who shared this. We always try to, pioneer projects that can have some influence, whether like changing and educating Israelis and Palestinians about the situation or informing decision makers and communities around the world that we need their help to influence the situation and go into the road that will lead us to peace. We believe that Israelis and Palestinians, like any other nations that had conflict, can also have peace. There's nothing particular about Jews and Palestinians that make them in a state of conflict forever.
Maoz, over to you.
So thanks, Hamze. It's always great to see you and hear you. And I wish I would spend as much as time as my brother spending with you, but inshallah, we'll do more and more things together. So at the age of 30, I already traveled the world twice. I've been to New Zealand, Australia, Nepal, California, and South America. And I learned about the indigenous people of each country and continent, about the Maori, about the Aborigine in New Zealand, the Sherpa in Nepal, and the Inca, the Maya, and the Native American and the indigenous people of South America. And I had not even one single Palestinian friend or colleague. I didn't know the difference between the Ramadan, the holy months that we're having now, the Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. I didn't know where Jesus was born, where he is buried, and where was the Annunciation. And I told myself, Maoz, it cannot be. You cannot continue with your life without knowing about the indigenous people that lives next door or next community to you, and you must change it. And I've decided the best way to change it will be by in tourism. I love traveling and I'm entrepreneur in my spirit. So I saw that if I'll open a community-based guest house in an Arab city within Israel, it can be a great place for me to learn and be educated. And then also some of my friends and guests will also want to be educated. And like most Jewish Israelis, I never been to Nazareth at the age of 30. And because of the geographical uniqueness in the central of the Galilee, and it is the largest Palestinian city within Israel, my wife and I decided 19 years ago to the date to open a guest house, the first ever in the old city of Nazareth. And since then, I've been living among Palestinians and made many friends, colleagues, and partners in the West Bank, within Israel, the West Bank, in Jordan, and Egypt. And I know for a fact that we can live among each other in peace, and that we have a lot in common, and we can agree on our on a common ground and principles. And now it's the time to use my own personal strategy as an opportunity. As an entrepreneur, I see every crisis, every tragedy as an opportunity. And I think now we have a great opportunity to create a coalition of individuals and organizations, Israelis, Palestinian, with the international community support, to make this war the last war. And I want my parents to be victims of peace, not victims of war. There is no justification to die in a war, to die for land, to die for not anything except for peace. And this is what I'm committed for.
Thank you both so much for sharing. And you know, you both have stories of personal loss. So let me just say that you know, we share our sympathies with you on those losses. And thank you so much for using those stories to bring us to the conversation that we're at today. And that's something else that I want to kind of talk about. You know, everything that you're saying, you're talking about realizing how much you have in common, and there's more in common than what separates us, and that we have to kind of share those stories and find those spaces where we do have things in common. But I think that where this work gets really hard, and I definitely see it even in our own diaspora communities, where the work gets hard, but I think also where the change is made the most, is when we're able to have the conversations that are difficult and the places where we do fundamentally disagree. And I think, you know, a lot of times one of the critiques of shared society work with Israelis and Palestinians is like, it's nice, you sit around, you eat hummus, you talk about football, soccer, and kind of avoid the touchy subjects. But I know for you both, you do get into those difficult subjects, and it is within those difficult subjects that we can actually start to move forward and actually start to make some change. But at times like this, where tensions are so high and things feel so difficult, how do you start approaching those kind of more difficult topics? And maybe you want to share an example of, you know, a time where you've had to do that and it's actually worked out well for you. Maoz, you can start us off with that one.
I will start. Yeah. So
Okay.
First, I'm just talking privately, public, and webinars like this with as many Palestinians as I can. I made it into a commitment to speak to as many as I can. Everyone that is willing to speak to me, I will speak with him. And this is how I'm learning. And this is where I'm being dealt with very difficult questions. And I'm finding answers, not just with myself, but with all those that I met before. So I think it was in November, a very close Palestinian friend that knew my parents and know me for many, many years. She told me, Maoz, can I ask you a very difficult question? I told her, you are my sister. Of course, you can ask me whatever you want. And she's saying, maybe, just maybe, your parents' house wasn't burned by the Hamas. Maybe it was a crossfire. Maybe by a mistake, it was the IDF. And literally, she ignored, I forgot the English word, But she said like October the 7th never happened. This is basically what she told me in my face. And I was shocked. Like, why is she taking our conversation there? And I waited for like, I took a big breath and I told her, you know what? Maybe you are right. Maybe you are right. I cannot know for 100% what burned my parents' house. We cannot know. But what does it matter? My parents are dead, and they are dead because of the war. And now my mission in life is to end that war, and that this will be the last war. So would you want to join me in my efforts to end the war and the conflict and bring peace to this land? Or do you want to argue about the present or about the past? And this is the answer. The answer is in the future. We cannot continue, or there will be no positive results for arguing about the past and the present. There won't be. But there are many promises and fruits in the future. So when people start asking me a very difficult question or something that I cannot answer, so I tell them, let's talk about the future. Let's decide how we want our future to look like, and then we'll also solve the past and the present. But the future is the key.
Thank you. That's amazing. Hamze, what about you?
Yeah, the same. You know, I learned not to be offended, and I hear really awful stuff, but I assume good intention. I assume people were brainwashed or misled to believe in these things, and I try to explain. I never leave any message unanswered, and I get messages like, if you Palestinians love your children, you wouldn't do whatever like you do, and I go into answering without anger and without you know, using the same argument against Jews or anything, and explain how much I love my son, we love our children, that in fact also animals love their children, and that those who you know put this statement had political agenda, and probably they never met a Palestinian on a personal capacity and never been to a Palestinian house. And it really works. Like, I have people who, since October 7th, every day writing me angry messages. And I wondered if like all my answers make any difference. And then they would tell me that I opened their eyes, that they're grateful for me teaching them about this issue or that issue that they were never familiar with. The thing is that there are people who are ideologically into the hate business, but there are the majority of people who are just brainwashed. Hate doesn't serve them in their personal life or their aspirations in life in any way. So these people that we have to win. I realize that there are some people who like, they have visions that link to their religious fantasies that they're not willing to give up even whatever you show them, but they're really minority. But you know, also like some activists get often offended so easily, and I think this is our work as activists to have thick skin, and you know, it's not about us, it's not about our feelings, it's about the future, as Maoz said. Like, do we really want to win arguments, or do we want really to just be angry all the time while seeing our future being highly uncertain? Or we want to, you know, if it's just you telling me something painful, I'm willing to take it. And if I win you as a friend, then this is a victory.
This is humbling for me because I get so angry by comments on my social media, and then I look at you both on social media just like answering questions way worse than what I get, with so much more empathy and compassion. I'm like, okay, I gotta learn from these two. So you've made a difference for me as well. And we'll stay on that topic for a second, because I think that both of you have really opened the eyes of many people and been able to have conversations through the internet in a way that we haven't been able to do before. And I see that, and I see how you interact, and I see how you build your audiences that way. And so I wanted to talk about a couple things that I've seen you both say that really stuck with me, that I think are really interesting, because that's where your platform is, kind of seeing what you're talking about there. So Hamze, I'm going to stay with you for a second, because you posted something on Twitter just recently. You said, peace populism occurs when either a Palestinian or Israeli affirms the mainstream claims of the opposing side to garner attention. Caution should be exercised with peace populists, as they typically avoid addressing the root causes of the conflict and fail to propose a constructive pathway for change. It's kind of what we're talking about here, right? Like just taking that uncritical mainstream view. So I'm wondering if you want to expand on that a little bit, that idea of peace populism, how you see that manifesting. And then also, when you talk about the root causes of the conflict, for you as a Palestinian, what do you see as the root causes of the conflict, and what's a constructive pathway for the future for change?
Good question. So for me, peace populism, exists on both sides. There are some Israelis that I am familiar with, and some Palestinians who, I think they are looking for attention, and they would say, for example, things, yeah, Jews have no place in this land and they should go back to Europe. And then they will get all the love from so many Palestinians and Arabs, because finally someone is saying what they like. Or a Palestinian who would say, everything is happening, everything because Palestinians don't know how to do politics, and they always upsetted the Jews, and they used violence, and ignore that there was, from day first of the state of Israel, a system that was not fair for both people. And then you see that people try to have conversation with them in a very polite and very constructive way, but they are not interested in conversation. They're just interested in these likes, and they actually get famous and they get a lot of follows. And I'm sure this is what they were after from the beginning. So this is their mission. And for me, as I said, like for me, the situation has been always, before October 7th and after October 7th, that there's a system that doesn't, that both people don't feel, at least the Palestinians don't feel that it's fair to them. And as long as this system continues, there will be angers and frustration from the Palestinian people, and there will be those who will use this anger and frustration, not only Palestinian, but also maybe from the region and even beyond the region, to create situations like October 7th and also before. It's unrealistic to expect peace without sense of justice. And I'm not talking about absolute justice, but like every Palestinian and every Israeli should have equal access to life, equal dignity, equal freedom of movement. There's no justification for separation in values of life, or for having people entitled to different rights. There's no justification. When October 7th, I said it bravely that there's no justification for October 7th, but I always said before October 7th, there's no justification for the siege on Gaza. There's no justification for building settlements. There's no justification. And we have to be consistent. And because if we want to be honest about peace, and because we want, the past is already, gone, and the present, unfortunately, but like, if we don't want the future to be similar to the past, we have to be honest, radically honest, and say, like, I am personally not willing to live if I'm not equal to my Israeli neighbors. With one state, two states, I don't care what solution will be figured out. And I'm sure there are hundreds of solutions. I mean, humans landed on the moon, like they found vaccine for COVID. Like there are solutions, but there's no willingness to look for solutions. But it will be naive, and it will be also misleading if you ever meet a Palestinian who says, I'm going to be peaceful under the occupation and under the siege. This is them being disconnected from themselves and their hearts and their minds. And I don't know why people want to protect a system that's not equal. I mean, was the system that existed for 75 years ideal for Israelis? Like, if we honestly and objectively look at it, I mean, Israelis go spend 2-3 years of their life in the army. Most of their taxes go to security. They are being in a region where they are unaccepted, at least by the people of the region. Adapting to this and coping with it doesn't mean this is a healthy environment. So since October 7th, we have seen horrible stuff. Why don't we dream big and ask for such a solution? And I know it will not happen overnight, but at least normalize the conversation about it.
Great answer. That's so really, really interesting to hear, and thank you for sharing. So Maoz, the post or kind of comment that I wanted to ask you about, I think dovetails really nicely into what Hamze is talking about, because it actually, on a post about this very event, there was an Israeli man who commented and said that, you know, because we had announced that obviously it was you and Hamze speaking with us, and he had commented to say that, you know, as an Israeli, he doesn't know if he wants to attend because Hamze's comments make him a little uncomfortable. And you replied to it and you said, if there are Israelis or people who love Israel, I suggest not only reading, but listening. I invite you to join and listen and ask questions. And so, you know, I'm curious to hear, I think, and this is kind of what Hamze is talking about in terms of a system that doesn't work for either side. On the Israeli side, there's so much trauma right now. There's still 134 hostages being held in Gaza. There's a lot of discontent, and it is growing with the Netanyahu government. And so I'm just wondering, in these moments where people are feeling so much pain, and where these events aren't events that happened on October 7th, they are events that are continuing to happen. How do you suggest doing what you're talking about, this listening and using our stories not to separate us, but to bring us together?
It's a great question, but it's very complicated answer, because I want first to start where I get and why I'm so inspired from Hamze and from other Palestinians, which if the Israeli public will ignore, not even willing to listen to Palestinian, so we'll continue the cycle of blood, death, hate, and fear will continue. We must listen. And what I realized after 20 years of entrepreneurship and partnership with Palestinians, that the first step in reaching a shared society and a shared future is knowing the other side narrative, knowing their fear, anger, obstacles, challenges, but also dreams and hope. And if you are not willing to listen to those narratives, and not just for the Palestinian, because also the Israeli society there are so many segments and sects and the fragmentation. So if we won't listen to each other, so how can we build a strong and a lively community and a country and a state? So we must start listen, even though sometimes it's very difficult to listen. It's it's very difficult, but we must. If we want to overcome our personal trauma, we must listen also to the other side. And by listening, I don't mean that we need to agree, and there is no point in arguing, because this is the concept of a narrative. It's their narrative. We cannot convert them to our narrative. We cannot convince them, or they cannot convince us that our narrative is different. So just listening. So this is exactly what I answer to this post. Just come and listen, because if we won't listen, then we're going to continue the cycle of revenge and blood, and there has been no ending. And then by listening, I learned so much in the last 6 months. And from Hamze, I learned 2 things that truly changed my life and everyone that around me. First, when Christiana Manpour asked Hamze, where do you see hope, Hamze? Where do you see hope? And Hamza didn't even need to think about it. Straight away he said, I don't see it, I create it. Hope is an action. And I told myself, this man is a genius. He learned me something that I didn't learn in more than 48 years on this planet, that hope is an action. And since that moment, this is what I'm doing. People ask me on the street, Maoz, what are you doing now? And they see me smiling, and I'm a very happy person. I was happy before October the 7th, and I'm a very happy and optimistic person nowadays. And they ask me, Maoz, what are you doing? So I tell them, I'm making hope. This is my job now. And then they ask me, what do you mean? So I tell them, look, I'm meeting JSpace on a webinar. I'm going to standing together events. I'm speaking with the family parent circle, with women wage peace, with combated for peace, with hand in hand, with Vadi Atir project with the Bedouin community, musicians event, Arab and Jewish musician that plays together. So all the day, I'm very much busy in making hope with others. So it fills me with such a positive energy and hope for the future, because I know so many of us already doing this, and we are living the future. If you will ask me what Hamze and I and with you, Meital, and I hope as many as with our listeners, we are living the future. This is how the future should look like. Palestinian Israelis, Jewish and Arabs, speaking freely about their life, their fears, but also about their dreams. And now, this is what the Israeli public, the ability the Israeli public lost. And among the Israeli public, those who lost it the most are our so-called leaders and politicians. They stop using their political imagination. They're living the present, and they think that the future will look like the present, but they are totally wrong. Totally wrong. And then I'm using metaphors or stories from the Jewish history. Because if Benjamin Zev Herzl wasn't invading the Zionist country, there would be none. So he was a dreamer. And I said this to a friend of mine, a philosopher, and he told me that in Vienna, there were two Jewish. One was Stefan Zweig, who was a very famous author, and Herzl. And someone asked Stefan Zweig, what do you think of Herzl? And he told the man who asked, he's the most lowest Jew that lives in Vienna nowadays. That's how he called Herzl. And few years after, Stefan Zweig killed himself. He committed suicide in Argentina. And Herzl is the visionary of the state of Israel. So I'm calling everyone, and I'm keep reminding myself, don't be afraid to dream, and to dream out loud and with others.
A beautiful answer, and you managed to do it while name dropping Christian Amanpour. So 2 points for you, Maoz. We have a couple folks with their hands raised. I have some questions too, but I really do want to make sure that folks on this call get a chance to ask their questions as well. So I saw Avril, you had your hand up first, and so nice to see you off of WhatsApp. Hi. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Hamza and Maoz, for creating hope. It's so needed in these days, and so few people seem to be talking about it. So thank you. I am curious, like, how do you deal with people who accuse anyone who is like creating dialogue between Jews and Palestinians of somehow normalizing the status quo in Israel? And I would love to know how you answer that, because I hear that from time to time and I don't know what to say. Like, I don't agree, but I don't know what to say.
Good question.
Hamze, you will take it?
Yes, sure. Yeah, this is like a never-ending question. I faced from day first when I start meeting Israelis. I think what doing is the opposite. I am denormalizing the status quo. I'm denormalizing the narratives. I'm denormalizing the paradigms of thinking about everything. and we are offering a new, totally new different paradigms and totally different values to think about. Those who, you know, are playing the game on both sides, you know, because they feed each other, are the ones who are making the situation normal and prolonged. I never met an Israeli in my life, and we didn't speak about the conflict. And I went to Hebrew University. I was the only Palestinian from the West Bank in the Hebrew University. Every class became about the conflict and the occupation. So what was normalizing about it? I was making people uncomfortable, but without, you know, dehumanizing or threatening them, showing them in one hand that I am totally committed to their life here and their right to be safe and to be secure, and no one should ever threaten their life for a political reason. The same, I want my people to be treated, but meanwhile, we still have to talk about the issues. And I was forcing them to talk about the issues. So if I, you know, became passive and let those in both sides who are, you know, playing the game, do whatever they want, and I just watch, then this is normalization. This is me normalizing my destiny and normalizing what's happening, and you know, and like really being really normalizer, because there's nothing normal about our life, you know, like we're really, I mean, in their standard of normal. So they use all, like, not only normalization, they use all kind of accusations, like, I don't know, like traitors and anti-Semites sometimes, and you're betraying your own people, all to silence people and cancel them. This is a culture that exists not only between Israelis and Palestinians, but about any topic. People think they're righteous and they know it all. And if you don't agree with them, they call you a name or something. And people get, sadly, you know, silenced, and they get frightened about it. And it's time that, you know, we should not listen to these people and have confidence. If anyone has a valid argument, we should listen. We always can learn something new. But just calling someone, and, you know, because they disagree with normalizer or self-hating Jew or whatever, it shouldn't work anymore. I really hope people get the courage to not accepting to be silenced.
Maoz, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think I'm listening and learning from Hamze. So I have, as always, so I have nothing to add.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much. Sophie, I see you have your hand up as well. You can unmute and ask your question.
Hi, as Avril mentioned, you are just both inspirational, and thank you so much, Hamze and Maoz. I do want to continue the line of Avril and challenge, and because you have kind of you propose that this space will be also for challenging conversation. So as an activist in on the left and pro-peace community for years, I do also face this similar challenge in terms of how do we reconcile this extreme kind of BDS, what we call anti-Zionist, very strong views, and those that try to look and pragmatically, like Omdim Biyachad, standing together, and so on. These forces, how do we reconcile? I feel, for me, it's a paralyzing situation because, so it's a difficult place to be, and I feel that it doesn't help us. I mean, I think that the dream is really that we somehow be able to come together, Palestinian and Israelis, and say loudly what's our vision, and that's what will bring us, if we can march millions of us outside, you know, on the streets and claim this future for us, which is different from the cycles of violence. What will make the difference. But I think that there is some paralyzing effect. How do we deal with this? Thank you.
Maoz, why don't I let you take that one?
Yeah, I will try to take it.
Okay.
First, many people choose a side now. So I never go and arguing with no one. I'm telling them you are right. Of course, you're right, and your side is right. But by being right, we are just ensuring the war will continue. So the question is, do you want to be right, or do you want the bloodshed and the war to end? And if you want it to end, please choose humanity. Choose to support the peacemaker. Choose to support those who are sacrificing now to make the future a better future. And I'm reading now books about Maya Savir on reconciliation. And she wrote there about the reconciliation process in South Africa and in Rwanda. And there are many, many lessons. I haven't finished the book yet. Hopefully soon, but I highly recommended it because there are many, many lessons we can take here. Each conflict is unique in its own way, but is similar to other conflict in different way. And we must start learning. And so the term right, what does it mean? Right or justice, or reconciliation, or the truth. What is the truth? So there are many ways to define those words, and each conflict, they define them differently. And we will need to define it here for ourselves. But I think what we must define is that we must build a coalition of those who want to end the war, to end the occupation, and to bring equality, and to start a process of reconciliation. So if you will stop speaking to someone completely just because he's from one side or the other, or is not 100% aligned to your agenda, no one will be aligned in 100% to our agenda. Even Hamze and I are not 100%. We are nearly there, but not yet. So by being right, it's just ensuring the conflict will continue. So I'm not arguing with no one. I'm not arguing, I'm just telling them what I think, and I show them by speaking to as many as I can, as public talks as many as I can. And it's so easy now with social media to share others from the other side, even though we are all from the same side, but from the other side, to amplify their voices. And but when you do feel your freeze, call us. Seriously, I'm speaking. I know Hamze and Ahmed Foual Khatib and my brother Magen. We are speaking to so many. Some of them with like 100,000 and more million followers. Sometimes they send me a post or a comment. Maoz, how would you answer this comment? So we are not alone. This is also something that really, really we need to know. We are not alone, and we are together. We are many, 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 many people, individual and organization, and together we'll make this into the last one.
Hamza, did you have anything to add that you wanted to add to that?
I just agree with Maoz, and I think, yeah, BDS is like any other force of the status quo. They want to silence any complex vision or a new vision. We should just not be silenced. As long as they don't come physically to stop me, I don't mind them shouting in my event. I don't mind them attacking me in social media. I know what I'm saying. I have confidence in what I'm saying. I'm happy to listen to critical counter arguments, and I always learn from them. But yeah, BDS is not offering any vision, and sadly, many of them are not even Palestinians. Like the ones who often attack me, they're not even Palestinians. So of course they will be radical because they have nothing to lose. But as a Palestinian, I calculate my radicalism because it's about my life. At the end of the day, we also, have to be selfish and care about ourselves, our families, and our future. And this changes all our calculation. but these will exist. There will be other voices. There will be, also governments, and we need support. Like, we need to unite, and we need support, because you see, like, no one is neutral. So many of the good people around the world decide to be neutral and watching. No, there's no neutrals here. You don't pick Israel or Palestine, but you pick the vision that aligns with your values. So we can also win. For our side to win, it has to be well supported.
Thank you for that. Before I move on to the next question, a lot of folks are wondering, what was the name of the book you're reading, Maoz?
In Hebrew, it's called Al Pius by Maya Savir. Hopefully it will be translated to English really soon. Al Pius. I will write it in the chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
For all the Hebrew readers, you can read that one. Great. And then also, if you guys have a second, while we're going to the next question, if you want to put in, I think your social media handles are just your name, your first name and last name, right? For both of you? Yeah. Okay. Great. So I see that Dan has his hand up as well. Also nice to see you off of the social media, Dan. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Maytal, for organizing this. Thank you so much, Hamze and Maoz. I really appreciate you both taking the time. Thank you also, Maytal, for responding to all my stressed out DMs whenever issues come up.
Always,
so
always.
I mean, there are a lot of questions I want to ask, but I'll start with one because Maoz, you were talking about past examples like South Africa and Rwanda, and I'm wondering about how much past examples, not even just from other cultures, but even from like Jewish-Muslim relations in the Middle East, like the Pact of Umar, and even if you look at Constantinople, there were examples where Jews and Muslims coexisted very peacefully together, or even like the 1996 Northern Irish referendum deal. If some of these can be used as a possible roadmap or blueprint to work from when engaging in these difficult conversations.
So what I'm using the example of the October War and Milchemet Yom Kippur War, which again, the name is different. There are two different narratives, October War and Yom Kippur War. And no one would believe, if we were sitting doing this webinar, and of course there was the internet and all the Zoom back in October 73, okay? At the end of the October 73. And someone of the speakers will say, in 4 years from now, the president of Egypt will visit Jerusalem. Everyone would say he's crazy. Egypt was the Israeli strongest enemy, receiving military aid from Russia, just like Israel is receiving now from the US and Germany. And not only President Sadat will come and visit, the prime minister who's going to welcome him is not going to be from the ever ruling party of Israel, from Mapai. It's not going to be Golda, it's not going to be Rabin, it's going to be Menachem Begin, who's been in the opposition for nearly 40 years. And till this historical visit, 60% of the poll of the population in Israel were against the negotiation, not against returning the Sinai Peninsula and evacuating the Israeli settlements from Sinai, against the negotiation. But President Sadat did arrive only 4 years after. Children of Israel were waiting for him in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Haifa, waving the Egyptian flag. Okay, waving the Egyptian flag, okay, which was the biggest enemy till recently. And the Israeli security forces were afraid it's like a Trojan horse. It's not going to be President Sadat that will come out from the airplane. It's going to be terrorists. So there were snipers on the roofs of the airport waiting. And of course, Sadat arrived. And Menachem Begin, our prime minister, said, we can prevent the war, but we cannot prevent the peace. 2 years after, peace accord was signed. And this is together with Jordan, which we also have a peace accord and diplomatic agreement. This is those are the only borders that we have security and safety. So in order to achieve security and safety, we must have diplomatic solution, and we must have agreements that will be supported by international community. So this is exactly what I'm telling to you Israelis. And just after hearing this, and I'm saying this is also the time frame we are working within. In 4 to 6 years from now, there's going to be peace. There's going to be peace between the Jordan and the river, the Jordan and the Mediterranean. This is the time frame between historical crisis till we achieve peace. And it was the same with the first Intifada. Yitzhak Rabin, that by Palestinians, is the war criminal. He said publicly to break their bonds. We're talking about Palestinians. And Yasser Arafat, that was by Israeli narrative, he was archi-terrorist. And first Intifada 87 and 91, there is the Madrid summit. International pressure for Palestinians and Israelis to meet. And only 2 years after, the crime war, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and the archi-terrorist Arafat are shaking hands in Washington. 87, 4 years, 91, Madrid summit, 2 years, shaking hands. So this is the time frame. So, but we need to work very, very hard. And this is why Hamze, I, myself, and Meital, and many of the people I see here on my screen, we are working hard to make this peace coming sooner than later.
Inshallah, Be'ezrat Hashem. Hamza, did you have anything to add?
No, exactly. And we also should think about Oslo. Like Oslo, even though was first attempt, full of mistakes and without, both sides had all their mistrusts. But the years of Oslo, we have seen, at least in the Palestinian side, I remember in my childhood, how the interest of people shifted. People started building houses, having parties, opening restaurants. Their way of life changed from survival and fighting the occupation to living like neighboring countries. And ideally, Oslo should have been followed with improvements and better agreements, and we would have had peace now. But if it was not, destroyed by the radicals, Oslo is not really a bad first attempt towards peace. And we should also, like now there is a very bad stigma to Oslo. We should revisit the history and think about, we were close to it, and we can do it again.
Thank you for that. So I see for a while both Henry and Jonah have had their hands up. So we don't have a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Henry. I'm going to ask you to ask your question very quickly, and then Jonah right after I'll ask you to ask your question, and then hopefully there's some way to combine those two into one beautiful answer.
Meital, you will answer, then I'm sure it
will. Yeah, I'll take the hardest one for sure. Henry, let's go to you first.
Okay, excuse me, I've got a bit of laryngitis, so I hope you can hear me. Okay, so I want to know, as a former educator, how do we get the young people of both the Palestinians and the Israelis to know about each other? Because right now, neither side really knows each other well enough to trust each other. They don't know their history. And I think that's one of the things that I've always felt that you need. And I think that that extends even outside Israel and the Palestinian territories, that unfortunately what we're seeing in the West, and the young people who are protesting, that they don't know the history. They don't know the background of what's been going on. And that's an unfortunate thing because our educational systems don't teach history properly. I also wanted to know, what do you both feel, how to change the politics in both Israel and the West Bank? Because neither political setup right now favors any kind of rapprochement between Palestinians and Israelis.
Awesome.
I'll leave it
Thank
there.
you. Great. Okay, so pause for 1 second. Don't answer yet. I know you're very excited to answer. Jonah, why don't you unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Sure, thank you. First, Maoz and Hamze, thank you both for your work. My question relates to something you were talking about earlier on how you talk about like the pushback you try to overcome within your own community when trying to advocate for peace with the other side. Now, me as an American Jew, like, I try to also play my role in peace, but not when I receive pushback from my Israeli family. So, maybe this question is more for Maoz, but Hamza, you can certainly comment on it. That the pushback I receive is that like, well, you don't live here. Why is it your place to tell us that like, we should listen to the other side, or like, why is it your place to do anything on this? So I'm curious to hear your comments on that, on how we those who live in the diaspora can overcome that pushback when they may say, well, hey, you don't live here. It's not your place.
Thank you. So, okay, so we've kind of got 2 questions that do dovetail nicely into one another. So folks getting to know one another, but then also pushback from those same individuals. Hamza, why don't I start with you this time?
Yes, I'll be quick. So for people to talk with each other, we need to stabilize the situation. The situation right now, there's war, and it's very, very bad war. But even before October 7th, the situation was not stable. I'm not asking from the international community to push a peace agreement, but they have to stabilize the situation. The situation has to be stable for people to, let their guards down and be open to talk to each other, and hopefully with enough resources that can build a momentum. And as of the second question, I think exactly because you're outside, you're able to see the full picture. Inside Israel and also inside Palestine, people can't think straight. It's a massive amount of propaganda, manipulation, tough life. People are scared, people are traumatized. They cannot think what's good and bad for themselves under these circumstances. They cannot even vote for the right leaders. They know their leader sucks, but they keep voting for them. And you being outside and you have the luxury, and you're calling for something that existed, part of our human history, like calling for peace, equality, stability, all of these things, talk to your enemy. All of that is not something you invented. It's something that has been used in all over conflicts, and you kind of be able to relate to it because you're outside in a healthy situation. And if they were in a healthy situation, they would also think about it in other conflicts. So no, don't let this argument silence you.
I would also add, and we are running out of time, I need another minute, that you are a human being. And as a human being, you are obligated to say what's on your mind and what do you think about anything that's happening on planet Earth. And if I guess right, if you are Canadian or American, that you are supporting Israel, if it's by military aid or in the Security Council. So I think it's more than legitimate to you to say what you think, because Israel do ask and taking your support, unfortunately, for granted. But that's for another webinar. I want now to answer the first questions about the education. And I'll start by giving a frame to this work. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've been engaging in more than 20 initiatives in the recent years. And there are 5 steps in all those initiatives. Is the dream, the values and principles, the partnerships, building partnership, making a road plan and a strategy plan, and the execution. And what you ask regarding the education of the young generation, it's about the roadmap that we need to make. And I'm very happy and pleased to say that we are on it. We are on it. Just 2 weeks ago, Hamze and I and 70 more Israelis and Palestinians, we met for a 3-day convention. And we came out with a common ground of principles. And based on those principles that I will share with you in a second, we are now working a strategy plan regarding education, regarding new leadership, regarding security and how to create security and safety for all. So we are on it. And we are now writing this plan, Henry, okay? And then an education is a very important chapter in this strategy plan. But I'm really excited to share with you the common ground, just the principle we agreed upon. We are united by a common purpose to promote a shared future in Israel and Palestine, founded on principles of recognition and acknowledgement, dignity and equality, security and safety, agency and inclusion, and trust through healing. This is just a very short sentence, but we are now working on how to amplify and go deeper and create a solid strategy plan that will be based on those principles and how to achieve a shared future for both Israelis and Palestinians in the very near future.
Amazing. What a wonderful note to end it on. So much optimism at a time that it feels like that is very much lacking. So really appreciate you once again taking time to chat with us today, to share your personal stories with us, to answer these questions so honestly and so vulnerably. Really appreciate having you here both. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having
us.
Thank you.
Before we end it, a couple things. First of all, Maoz, if you want to send those principles to me, so that I can share those with our folks, or if you're going to be sending those out, there's some requests for those.
It will come soon. It will come soon.
It'll come soon. There you go.
Yes,
there you go, everyone. Be patient. The next thing that I want to say just really quickly, and I'll just remove our speaker pins here so they don't have to sit awkwardly looking at me and listening to me. But I do want to let everybody know that we intend to bring you a lot more content like this. These are confusing times. These are complex times. These are painful times. And we want to make sure that we're, as much as possible, opening up a space for folks to talk and listen and share. So we have started something called our Day After series, which is a series of in-person and online events. I'm going to put the link in the chat here. We have an in-person event coming up in Toronto next month, and we have some great webinars as well coming up, including next week with Dahlia Scheindland and former Canadian Ambassador to Israel, John Allen, about something that Canadians know we've been talking about a lot, which is Palestinian statehood recognition and working towards a two-state solution. So I hope you join us for that. You can get that on the link. Finally, my last note that I want to make is that JSpaceCanada is an entirely volunteer-run organization. We could not do it without your support. We could not do it without your help. We do request, if you are able, following this webinar, if you enjoyed it and enjoy the programming we bring you, to please make a donation. The best way to support this type of work is through a monthly donation, because then we can continue to do these for you every month. So I'm just going to put our donation link here in the chat as well. And finally, once again, I already thanked Maoz and I thanked Hamze. Thank you so much, all of you. In these times, it is so nice to know that we're not alone. It is so nice to know that there are others who are the good.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Week after week, they're growing. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you all soon.